I step into the corridor and stop by the window, watching the Crimson Dusk crew celebrating amongst themselves. The treaty has been sealed, and though I'm sure the road ahead will be tough, it's a small victory.
Nico?
A voice pulls me from my solitude, and when I turn, it's to find June striding towards me, his long legs making quick work of the distance. We'd barely seen each other since our last conversation, and though I'd assumed he'd been trying to avoid me, it certainly doesn't seem that way now. I don't say anything as he approaches, but I note the way he struggles to meet my eyes, and it stings a little.
Can we talk?
Of course. He leans against the window, his tawny hair falling into his eyes as he fixes them on the ground.
I just wanted to say, I shouldn't have pushed you away. I knew you weren't to blame for what happened to me. I was overwhelmed.
He shakes his head and scoffs, as though that wasn't exactly what he wanted to say, and I wait patiently for him to speak again.
The truth is, there's no excuse for the way I acted. Learning who you are opened doors I'd spent a long time trying to close. It brought memories to the surface that I never wanted to face again, and
He chokes on the word, his face anguished.
I took it out on you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Nico.
He hurt me, but I find it difficult to continue blaming him, given what he seems to have gone through. June, you don't have to apologize. I understand.
You're far too kind, Nico. I've never done anything to deserve someone like you in my life, and I'm afraid you don't understand as well as I should have ensured. Will you let me explain myself to you? I think you deserve to know.
Okay. June attempts to smile, the effort lost beneath the wave of misery that washes over him.
I told you about the labs, but what I didn't tell you was...
He falters, trembling fingers fiddling with the bracelet on his right wrist. His eyes glisten with unshed tears as he's dragged into what I can only assume are his own memories. Terrifying memories.
I know that your family hasn't made you who you are. I could see that from the moment I met you. But for me, it's different.
He hesitates, his jaw clenching tight as he summons whatever strength he needs to continue.
I was one of them.
You... what?
One of the experiments.
His chin trembles, his breath growing ragged, as though he were in physical pain. I dig my fingernails into my shaking palms to keep myself steady, to give him time to talk.
I never had a childhood or any life on Orion. My entire existence had been confined to a lab, an existence mapped out from the very first breath I took. The only joy I had was my brother, Julian. I called him Jules. We were twins in every way, except one. Our endurance. Daily, we were exposed to the substance they pulled from the mines. Subtly, at first, when we were too young for more invasive procedures. Less subtly as we grew older and more resistant to the drugs. I could take it for some reason. My body reacted quicker, easily adapting to whatever they put me through. My muscles were stronger, my reflexes were faster, my emotions more easily controlled. Jules, he couldn't.
My heart shatters when June lets out a strangled sound, and I watch, terrified, as the tears spill down his face.
He couldn't take it. I was so easily controlled, so easily tamed, but he wasn't. They crafted me into a monster. The blood that runs through my veins is tainted with Orionite, my very existence poisoned by its presence. I'm stronger, faster, deadlier than any human. But that's because I'm not human anymore. They ruined my brother to turn me into this thing.
He half turns, leaning back against the window and taking in a deep, shuddering breath.
He was good with his hands. Creative, funny. Jules was the kindest soul I'd ever met. I was the strong one. But it was he who had my back. It was Jules who held me as I struggled with my own mind. It was Jules who ignored his own sickness to make sure I was looked after.
June lowers his head, running his fingers slowly over the bracelet on his right wrist, a sad smile cracking through the constant flow of tears down his cheeks.
These bracelets are his handiwork. I took his when he died.
He stares off into the distance, his mind and memories far, far away from here. June.
He never saw the outside of a lab. Never had any friends. Never found love. His life was never his. He never even had a chance.
June breaks apart completely, a sob tearing from his lips as he buries his face in his hands. His whole body shakes with every heartbreaking sob, every breath fracturing under the weight of his own memories, of his twin. I hesitate, not knowing how to help him. What could I possibly do to ease the pain? I don't think before I act. Stepping closer, I wrap my arms around the sobbing man in front of me and hold him tight. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He doesn't reply, instead wrapping his arms around me in return, his body shaking against mine with every breath he takes. He buries his head on my shoulder, and I realize I'm crying too when I feel the warm tears slowly trailing down my cheeks. Neither of us speaks for a while, the only sounds surrounding us the cries that still fall from his lips and the whispered words of sorrow that pass mine. How could this have happened? How could my family let their people be treated like experiments? All the suffering, all the misery. I wish I could hug the hurt away from him. I wish I could tear his pain out of him and swallow it myself, if only to let him smile for a day. He settles eventually, his sobs calming until he finally catches his breath. His tears still stain my shoulder, but his body no longer shakes in despair. Can I ask you something?
Yes.
What about your parents? You mentioned them before, but...
They were the scientists who experimented on us.
What? A broken sound escapes him, almost a bitter laugh, and his arms tighten around me as if he needs something to keep himself grounded, to keep his mind here.
Yeah, we were born for the sole purpose of being their experiments. They actually started while Jules and I were still in the womb. They never loved us, never cared about us as anything other than another experiment. They never even named us. We were just a bunch of numbers.
But then, where did June and Jules come from?
Jules named me first. Juniper was the label under a picture of some plant he'd seen around the lab. I didn't quite get it at first, but then I learned of a comet, so bright it lit up the night sky, so full of life. Its name was Julian. We shortened them after a while, but it was our own little secret. We were more than numbers and data, if only to each other.
June pulls back, but still holds me by my arms, his lips trembling as his eyes meet mine. All I see in him is fear. Fear of what he might see in mine after his reveal.
Do you see now what I truly am? I'm a monster, Nico. I've been one ever since I was born.
Nonsense. June, you're the kindest, bravest, gentlest soul I've ever met, and I will never let you believe otherwise. You are my friend, a dear friend of mine. You saved my life when you didn't even know me. You've protected me countless times ever since. You are not a monster, June. June shakes his head, but his eyes soften ever so slight.
You're far too kind to me, Your Highness.
My name is Nico. A low chuckle escapes him, and he squeezes me once more affectionately. A deafening siren goes off, snapping us out of the moment. What was that? June turns around, his eyes wildly scanning the hideout. All traces of the tears he shed are gone in an instant, his demeanor shifting into one of anger.
They're under attack.
Stunned, I rush to the window to see for myself. The Crimson Dusk are quick to retaliate, all of them running for their weapons and immediately moving towards the invaders. With a chill, I recognize the uniform, the symbol shining on their shoulders. Chimeri.
Fuck. We need to get you out of here. Come with me and don't run off, okay?
June waits for me to nod before taking off to the docks, and I'm quick to follow, our footsteps barely audible against the battle sounds from outside.